This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's September 3rd, 2025. On this day in 1956, Tennessee Governor Frank Clement deployed the National Guard to the town of Clinton, near Knoxville. A federal judge had ordered the high school there to desegregate. It was the first in the South to be given an integration order, and the backlash was intense. A group of black students known as the Clinton 12 attended their first class on August 26, and from that point, large crowds of angry white people gathered each morning outside the school. Protests turned to intimidation, turned to violence. Fewer and fewer students showed up for class. After a week, the Guard was called in for what was codenamed Operation Law and Order. According to the local newspaper reports at the time, it involved 600 troops, more than 100 vehicles, including tanks, armored personnel carriers, and a helicopter were sent to the town. For comparison, that was almost as many Guard members as there were students enrolled in the high school. It was the first time in this country's civil rights movement that the National Guard was sent in to handle problems. And it wouldn't be the last. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context. From Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. The governor's specific orders for the Clinton deployment said that the Guard wasn't there to, quote, enforce or oppose integration in the school, but to maintain law and order, end quote. And it's certainly true that what elevated the problem to the point of sending in the troops wasn't the desegregation itself, it was the intimidation and violent actions that followed. But also, it had come to a head because of desegregation, and just canceling the school integration wasn't a legal option, so they had to make sure it happened. In other words, at the heart of everything, it was about desegregation. I think it's pretty clear that Governor Clement was engaging in a little bit of maneuvering to hold a hot-button issue at arm's length. Take the conversation about the Guard's part in everything away from integration, which was contentious, and turn it to keeping the peace, which most people can agree on. Fast forward to today. About 2,000 Guard troops from several states, including Tennessee, are on the streets of Washington, D.C. right now. The stated purpose is law and order. And beautification, evidently. According to the Army's website, they're also just picking up trash. There's talk of expanding that approach to other cities. President Trump has hinted that Memphis is on a short list of places the Guard might be deployed. Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn, who's running for governor, has said she would support a Memphis deployment. Now, Governor Bill Lee clearly sees some value in sending Tennessee Guard members to maintain law and order in the nation's capital, but he doesn't think a deployment is necessary in Memphis. Last week, he pointed to advances made in crime reduction in that city and pointed to money the state has spent there. Now, what he did not point out is that even with improvements, the violent crime rate in Memphis is far higher than Washington, D.C.'s. In fact, the rate in Memphis is the highest in the nation. So why support the Guard in one city but not the other? Well, in political squabbles within the state, Memphis and Nashville are the two blue cities the Republican supermajority loves to criticize and attempt to micromanage. But on a national stage, Memphis is home turf. Lee is the sitting governor. He'd lose face if the Guard were deployed to police a spot within his own state's boundaries. Now, some might ask why people are bothered by the idea at all. If there's a problem that's out of hand, why not send in the Guard to bolster the local forces? If it worked in the civil rights era, why wouldn't it now? Well, first of all, the situation in a place like Clinton back in 1956 was not a war exactly, but it did have a lot of things in common with the kind of battles the Guard trained for. And yes, policing is a component of military training, but not really the kind of policing we've come to expect in a well-run city. Certainly not the kind that a lot of advocates really push for now, where officers step back in some situations to let mental health professionals or social workers take over. What the Guard has to offer is more of a blunt force that has the effect of intimidating as much as it helps. One of my most visceral Nashville memories was made the winter following the 9/11 attacks, when the Tennessee National Guard troops were posted around the state capitol building to beef up security there. I was driving home from work late one night as a snowstorm hit, avoiding interstates because of all the bridges that might ice over. I was coming from the north. I needed to pass through downtown. And around that steep hill that the Capitol sits on, all traffic was being directed to one street, and they'd sent the guard out to manage that. They used what tools a guard unit keeps on hand to carry it out, which is why I found myself utterly shocked to suddenly be looking down the massive gun barrel of a tank that was being used to block the street I usually took. Perched on top was a soldier in full camo, holding another huge weapon, waving me in a different direction. Now, he was just taking on the role of a traffic cop, a totally peaceful task, and God bless him for standing out there in the cold to make sure people like me got home in one piece. But let's just say the accessories made it terrifying. That is the kind of security now being deployed at public transit stations in D.C., along the National Mall, patrolling residential neighborhoods in that city. That's what could be headed for Memphis. As intimidating as a police officer in uniform can be, a soldier outfitted for war really ratchets things up a few notches. But does the Guard actually add much of anything to overall safety? That Army article about the D.C. deployment mentions that they have responded to one violent incident, but mostly it cites the Guard helping out with medical emergencies and, like I said, picking up trash. And that's great. But it mostly sounds like things the existing first responder crews could have handled on their own. In just a few minutes, this week's edition of What Wear Wednesday. That's coming up after the newscast.
Nashville Public Radio is always here to keep you informed, whether it's the latest news or music you should check out. Every week, What Wear Wednesdays shares the latest happenings taking place right here in Nashville by talking to members of our community, putting on events in your neighborhood and beyond. So tune in to What Wear Wednesdays every Wednesday, and you can always find events at WNXP.org/events.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Tennessee's governor and attorney general are appealing a court ruling which struck down two of the state's gun laws. Last week, a 3-judge panel ruled that guns are allowed in parks and that police cannot arrest someone just for having a firearm. State Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti filed an appeal yesterday on behalf of the state, seeking to overturn the decision. Republicans in the state legislature, meanwhile, have praised the ruling. State Representative Jody Barrett, who's one of nearly a dozen candidates vying for the GOP nomination in this fall's special congressional election, has voiced his support for the ruling. A simmering conflict between Nashville General Hospital and Meharry Medical College is being resolved. The two sides have finally agreed to a new contract. The institutions have had a tense relationship for decades since the city began operating the safety net hospital at Meharry in the 1990s. WPLN's health reporter Catherine Sweeney explains.
Nashville General is owned and operated by the city, but it's housed in a building on the Meharry campus. The school is one of a handful of HBCUs in the country that trains doctors. Faculty work in the hospital and students get clinical experience. Since 2023, they've been working under an expired contract. Reaching a new agreement was a persistent struggle. That was among the major sources of tension between the hospital, the medical school, and the city government earlier this year, a flare-up that ended with Nashville General's longtime CEO resigning. Hospital and university executives are presenting and signing the new contract Wednesday morning. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company is donating an unspecified amount to 4 Memphis Shelby County schools. The company says it will fund HVAC improvements, athletic facilities, and science labs. But a small group of students say the gift comes with a moral and environmental cost. Chalkbeat spoke with youth activists who call the donation an attempt to smooth over concerns about the company's controversial data center. They say it is contributing to toxic air pollution that increases health risks in a historically black neighborhood. An initial air quality test in July did not find harmful levels of certain pollutants, but environmental groups questioned the report's methodology, which did not follow EPA standards or test for ozone. One school board member tells the outlet she wants the AI company to be a partner with the school system and address the community's concerns about pollution. Meanwhile, the company has plans to open another data center in the area. XAI has ordered more than 60 natural gas turbines for that site. though it's unclear whether they'll be used to power it. When Immigration and Customs Enforcement raided Nashville in May, some immigrant families kept their kids home from school, fearing arrest. And while it's not possible to determine the cause, that correlates with a drop in attendance and enrollment in several schools with high populations of immigrant students. Multiple families tell the Nashville Banner how they worried about being arrested while taking their children to school. One mother shared her fear and frustration, realizing that by staying home to avoid ICE detention, she and her husband could instead end up in truancy court. Fear of immigration detention is not an explicitly excused absence, according to Metro Schools policy. But a spokesperson tells the Banner that principals have some flexibility to work with families. Some educators went out of their way to coordinate transportation for immigrant families and all their other support. But amid continued enforcement and deployment of the National Guard, one school counselor says families are preparing for another crackdown. KIPP Nashville Collegiate High School is among the top 5 best high schools in the city. Many of the kids are from low-income families. WPLN's Camelia Burris spoke with the school's principal about how she helps her students reach their highest potential.
U.S. News and World Report ranks KIPP Collegiate as the number 4 public high school in Nashville. It measures factors like college readiness, graduation rates, advanced class offerings, and state test scores. Halima Libby, KIPP's principal, says accolades are nice, but more important is how those rankings translate to real-life opportunities.
And being proficient in English and in math, or getting a 21 or above on the ACT that's going to give them access to Hope scholarships, that's going to give them access to different Tennessee Promise or whatever the case may be. We're talking about open accessibility for our students.
This aligns with the mission of KIPP. The school is part of a national network of public charter schools focused on preparing kids in underserved communities for college success. For example,
the amount of our Black boys in particular that were able to matriculate to four-year universities and weren't relegated to Nashville State because they didn't have any other options.
Libby says KIPP was losing students before she joined the staff last year. She credits the turnaround with offering kids new opportunities for the first time, like Princeton Review for ACT prep, dual enrollment courses, and National Honor Society membership. Kids had longer, uninterrupted class times, and they have no access to cell phones during the school day. Many of KIPP's staff are people of color. Libby says it's important for kids to see teachers that look like them.
They're like, oh, Miss Libby, you rich, you own your own house, you have credit. No, baby, I'm not rich. But all of these things that I have is attainable for you.
She reminds her students that doing well in high school will help them achieve financial success, and notes the sense of community that KIPP offers its students.
The commitment is different, and the way you show up is different, because I'm not just looking at you like you're one of my students. I'm looking at you like you could be one of my children.
And she says they're not resting on their laurels. They're looking to move up in the rankings next year. Camelia Burris, WPLN News.
Well, after canceling the festival 3 times in the last 5 years, Bonnaroo organizers are changing things up. The festival's director tells the Tennessean that in response to weather-related issues this year and in 2021, the festival is doubling down on efforts to improve drainage for next year. And they're moving one stage that had been in wetlands to the main festival area, Centeroo. The changes will also mean a decrease in festival capacity. Though the reduction in headcount is still up in the air, Bonnaroo will try to reduce the number of car passes by a few thousand. Campers won't be able to enter the festival grounds until Wednesday of the festival week. And programming will also be affected by the changes. Instead of having a full lineup of acts on Thursday, 2026's Bonnaroo will feature an opening party with one big act. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. A month-long theater festival is a special thing. One that spotlights Black experiences is on a whole different level. Marquise can tell us more about it.
I'm Marquise Munson here with another edition of Nashville Public Radio's What We're Wednesday, keeping you up to date with the happenings in Nashville this week. Live music opportunities start Thursday night with backyard sessions curated by WNXP at the Bobby Hotel Rooftop Lounge, featuring Jaron Blair and Monrovia.
You've been unraveling. Tell me, why did you run past the dogs and the horses?
Also on Thursday, Spacey Jane performs at Brooklyn Bowl, and Camp takes the stage at Ascend. Friday night, Nashville artist nicknamed Jose performs at Cannery Hall's Row 1 stage. Saturday night, 9 Inch Nails is at Bridgestone Arena. And Sunday night, Duran Bernard performs at Brooklyn Bowl. Back at Bridgestone Arena Monday night with Eric Clapton performs, and performs at Dark Matter. And we wrap up this week's listings Tuesday night as WNXP presents Frankie Cosmos at the Blue Room. For more events, head over to WNXP.org/events. This week for What Wear Wednesday, we feature Shades of Black Theater Festival happening throughout the month of September at the Dark Horse Theater. Its purpose is to provide an outlet to uplift voices of Black artists while being inclusive to artists of other races, ethnicities, and identities through full-length and spoken word performances, as well as workshops and other special events.
Sean Witzel, one of the co-founders and organizers of the Shades of Black Theater Festival. So it came together in 2006. I was a part of a theater company called Dream 7 Theater Productions. And it just so happened that Dream 7, a production company called Sister Style, and then a production company called Robin's Nest, which are all owned and operated by Black artists, just happened to book the Dark Horse Theater at the same time, back to back to back. So we thought this is interesting, a unique coincidence. And we decided that we were going to help each other promote each other's shows. And that idea grew into us saying, well, why don't we just throw some extra little events, maybe some workshops, and do a mixer and just make it like a little festival. And that's what we did. And we just decided to keep it going. So we've done it every year since then. I'm doing this show called Within Reach, which it premiered at the Kindling Arts Festival in July. And the reason why I highlight this show is because it's written by folks who have been impacted by incarceration. Some of them are still in prison. Some of them have been released from prison and are out living their lives. And there's one person who wrote something who was never in prison, but has a close family member who was. So it's telling their story. So I feel like I want to highlight that show simply because of the importance of it being written by folks who have been impacted by the justice system. And that's going to be Sunday, September 7th at 3 p.m. We also do this thing at the end of the month. We're doing this 24-hour short play showcase when we select 5 playwrights. Some of them have never written anything before, and they get 12 hours to write a short play based on things that we give them. They draw the genre and other things. They turn it in 12 hours later. We release it to directors and actors, and then they put it together, and then they perform that night. So it goes from 6 p.m., us getting together to select the things that they're going to use, and then the next 6 p.m. the show is starting. So that's always a whole lot of fun. So that's another highlight.
Malik Walker. I've got 2 bachelor's degrees, one in political science and the other in speech and theater, a master's in criminal justice.
Well, that's very impressive. But
I was scheduled to start law school this semester, but I deferred to you.
Okay.
I deferred for you.
For me.
If you look throughout our society, you can find disparities everywhere, right? In the theater space, in the art space, we want to make sure that we do our part to fill that gap. And so it's not an exclusive festival by any means. We have had white actors or non-Black actors and directors, even playwrights. One of the shows that I'm doing is Buffalo Soldiers, written by a white gentleman. So we make space for anybody of any ethnicity, but we do put emphasis on Black voices. So for every show, there has to be a Black director or a Black playwright or a Black lead, right? So we want to make sure, and it's important because there are other spaces where those voices aren't as prominent or have been muted in some way historically and today. And so we're just doing our part to make sure those voices are lifted up. Shades of Black is a place where anybody can come and be a part of it as an audience member. We also open our doors to people who want to act as well. Sometimes people have no acting experience. We open our doors to people who want to be involved in the theater world in some way. So come see us.
For more about Shades of Black Theater Festival and other events happening this week, visit WNXP.org. My name is Marquise Munson, and thank you for listening to another edition of What We're Wednesday.
Just can't seem to get it right. How the hell am I?
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/Nashvillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.